whom is here, who designed the book, David Barish. David, if you could raise your hand or stand up in the back there.
There you are.
And one who isn't here, and I don't know why, I think he's on the freeway somewhere, Tom Meyer, who wrote the foreword to the book. And Tom is a native San Franciscan, a guy who had an art gallery for years and was in the Navy.
No, that's not.
So I thought, gosh, if I could get him to write a little foreword to this book, that sort of is a nice, you know, coincidence of life experiences that he had. And he is on his way. So that's out of the way. Thank you, guys. Oh, and I want to acknowledge Leanne.
Oh, always.
The great Leanne. Who puts up with this stuff. And it actually encourages it. So thank you, dear.
And it's been talking in your book.
Yeah. She's a great promoter. Great promoter.
And our kids for coming.
Yeah, well, I could.
Go on forever.
Okay, Grace, Emmy, Grace, and Travion, my grandkids.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for coming. Okay, last off.
Okay, so this is such a big crowd for such a big book.
I know.
It's a very impressive book.
Brooks has lots of friends.
What?
Brooks
Okay,
has
but
lots of friends.
that's good. That's good. You're probably more inclined to buy books. So Brooks,
No, I don't
can
think
you
this
hear
is
me?
on.
No.
No.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Better?
Yeah.
You
All right.
can.
So Brooks, for the literalists among us, would you just start by explaining what Mare Island is and how you came to discover it?
Yeah, Mare Island, for those of you who don't know, it's not really an island, number one. It's about 25 miles north of San Francisco, near Vallejo. And it was one time the largest naval shipbuilding base in the world. Opened in 1854, and the first admiral, was David Farragut, the Civil War admiral, and the guy who said, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." So it has this fabulous history, and the reason we're gathered here April 1st, it was closed by an act of Congress in 1996 on April Fool's Day. So that's what, over 100 years of serious operation. 50,000 people used to live and work there. Everything from frigates to submarines, nuclear submarines to, you remember the swift boats, Vietnam, and the swift boat, the John Kerry incident, were built at Mare Island. I moved to the Bay Area 6 years ago, and I joined a club, a very special club called the Lincoln Park Golf Club. Yay! And they had a tournament at Mare Island. Mare Island has one of the oldest golf courses west of the Mississippi. It was built for the officers, 9 holes, and they added on 9 holes later. I want to say in the 60s or 70s. So I don't know anything about Mare Island. I just know I'm going over there to play golf, and I've got an 8:30 tee time. And I get off the 37 and take the Mare Island exit, and I go, whoa, what is this? Incredibly impressive buildings, architecturally. Everything from sort of, the longhouses in Borneo, really long, like clapboard houses, brilliant sort of industrial, skylit, industrial cathedral buildings, just huge. Squat little officers' quarters, cinder block homes, everything boarded up, broken windows, graffiti, a total abandonment. And I got fascinated. I remember, I was almost late to the tea time, and I remember seeing Dan DeVries, and he goes, boy, you just got here in time, because I was like taking pictures. I got out of my car, started walking. And I remember telling Leanne, I think I discovered my own ruin. It was like I'd found this Roman ruin. It was just totally, totally mine. So I ended up going out there a lot. It's about, from where I live, it's about a 40-minute drive. And I just get out of my car and wander around, and I started writing about it. And I didn't write like you really write. I mean, what really led me in the writing were the images I was taking. In the book, if you get it, you'll see there are lots of, they're just kind of hardcore black and white images. But I was like walking with them, you can get that. And I was kind of like, it was when I discovered I could dictate on my iPhone. So I was doing that, and I was writing on anything. I carry the New York Times with me a lot in my little backpack, and I'd write little notes in the margins, and stuff that was coming to me. So that's a little snapshot of how the book came to be and how the place resonated.
So could I ask you to read a passage?
Sure.
Yeah. Try that one.
Because the buildings were empty, there's an eerie transparency to each one. Like each one is imploring me to look inside, promising to turn the past inside out so I could finally see the truth of what had happened. Then the opposite happened. The more open a building was, the more it concealed, and the less inclined I was to make up a story about it. Since I didn't know what the buildings had been made for, what their purposes had been, it didn't matter whether they'd been used well or misused. It only mattered that they were empty. And emptiness can be quite thrilling. So this is what I mean by the industrial, the architectural quality of this place. It's just remarkable. But it was interesting sort of self-assignment as a writer, because I didn't want to know what Mare Island is. I really resisted Googling, like its history and stuff. I wanted to make up my own story about it.
Well, so you're making up your own story about a literal ruin. What was the line? And emptiness can be quite thrilling. I mean, it's poetic, but it's not exactly poetry. So, what kind of book is this anyway? I don't know what's making me like so.
I really don't know. I think somebody asked me what genre. Okay, I told a friend I was doing this, and he goes, "Well, what genre would you call it?" Genre. And I kind of fumbled around and told him what the book was about, and he said, "Well, maybe is it a memoir?" I said, "No, it's not a memoir." "Is it a history?" "No, it's not a history." "Is it poem? Are they poems?" I said, "No, absolutely not. They're not poems." "Well, what is it?" And so I kind of had to self-define it, and I came up with walking meditation.
Oh, cool.
Because that's what I was doing, really, clearly. When I look back on it, I was just like being with the property, the ruin. And I probably made 15, 20 visits out there through a course of a couple of years. And the book sort of just, at that point, started writing itself when I started interfacing with the images. There's no, you won't find a section in this bookstore that's called Walking Meditation. So I don't know what you do with it. And I really don't know what it is. It's a hybrid. How's that? It's a hybrid book.
So, just to illustrate maybe, how about that passage in that one?
Okay. These two.
Those two, on the bottom.
I was born in 1950 and grew up during the Cold War, never imagining that the place I lived in when I was growing up had a future I couldn't imagine. It seems important to me now that I begin to look at places this way, that they may or may not have a future, and that I'm irresponsible if I don't. When I confide in Ben, a poet, a man much younger than me, that I'd been depressed for about a year, feeling that we are ruining the earth and our actions are irreversible, he says, "Now you know how all of us feel."
So, this is a genuine question. It may take us a bit off the track of the universality of the book. But where were you in your life when you began your wanderings?
I was totally irresponsible for the first time in maybe 50 years. I had no job. I had enough money to live. I'd sold a business. My kids were grown and on their own. And I didn't have any pets. And I was just, the first time in my life, really, that I had no, I want to say, responsibility. So I was making it up. You know, it's kind of like making up projects and doing things that I'd always wanted to do and hadn't done, put off, which is a kind of a scary proposition in itself at first. And now I have nightmares about going back to work.
Okay. So there's one of the things that I felt as I read the book was this very acute sense of time.
Mm.
I mean, it's you know, the history, you know, you consciously didn't explore the history to begin.
Mm-hmm.
And so the history's kind of murky, and of course the future's kind of uncertain and improbable. But nonetheless, there's this sense that you're looking back and you're feeling this sense of responsibility. That's your word.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a responsibility to extract meaning from history.
Mm-hmm.
And then later you told me that we should be our own historians.
Mm.
You want to expand on that?
Sure. I was doing something. I mean, I was like thinking about what it means to be a citizen. You know, what does that really mean? I'm probably like a lot of people in this room, sort of had been politically active at one point in my life, and always been interested in what do I want to say, political life, social life, cultural life, but was, I mean, I tell people now I'm retired from voting. I'm almost at that point, but not really. So I was thinking about what it means to be a citizen, and you know, coupled sort of with you know what I was trying to think about my life in terms of using time. You know, one of the interesting things about aging is this sort of simultaneous lengthening and shortening of one's perspective. You know, everything becomes clearer in a sense, but everything becomes more murky and more mysterious and more, how do I say, convoluted. So I was thinking, I mean, Mare Island really, you know, it sort of coalesced a lot of retrospective thinking I was doing about my own life and the life of the country we live in. So I think that's the best answer I can give. You know, it was sort of this happy coincidence of things that I was thinking about, and it all came to, you know, and all came together. But it's this place, Mare Island, brought these little strands together.
So I want to press you a little bit more. So you said it's our responsibility to be our own historians.
Yeah, I think that there might be a better word, but to act as in a way that somebody might write about you someday. Does that make any sense? To behave in such a way, socially and personally, that not that you're being looked at, but that you have a part in what is taking place in front of you. You have a part in our social life. And consequently a responsibility. And I don't mean it's a heavy thing or you know, a dire thing, but just one of the things that does sort of disappoint me about our, what do I want to say, our culture now is there's sort of a demonstrable lack of curiosity, it seems to me. That so many of us go through our lives, just sort of go through our lives. Don't ask questions, don't really demand much of ourselves. And I was challenging myself to do that, you know? I think, you know, try to, what is this? What happened here? And this was such a, have you gone out to Mare Island? I really urge you to.
No.
There's a brilliant little museum there. It's kind of like a French museum, you know, that Loving Hands at Home, you know, the people of the community made the museum. and it's really, it's quite a little genius place. It's open, and it's, I hope nobody from Mare Island's here, but it's run by a bunch of crackpots. I mean, literally, these people are like, I asked a lady, so I go in there, and a lady at the desk is named, she says, you know, kind of like, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm just a tourist, just looking around. And she says, well, if you have any questions, ask me. I love questions. So I think, okay, I look around a while, and I came back to her and I said, you know, why is that window cracked? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why isn't there more attention, you know, paid? Because it's pretty down at the heels. And she said, well, we can't get any money because we're affiliated with the military. And the liberals won't give us any money. They give it all to the gay community. Yeah, so you get the, and the president of the Mare Island Museum is Admiral Zadwick. And so you get, you know, there's this really interesting sort of dualistic thing going on out there.
Okay. Before I go on any further, I think before you give up voting, maybe in 2017, okay?
Yeah.
You mean I should register?
Yeah. Hang in there, Brooks.
All right. It's so inspiring, I gotta tell you.
So you mentioned the photography, and I was struck as I went through the images that there, you know, without the words, there's much to meditate on. There's this one photograph. Okay, Marcia's getting the signal to talk to the mic. There's a photograph of an enormous, it looks like multi-story curtain of I don't know what kind of material. And in the background there's this sort of massive geometry of steel and glass. And then on another page, a kind of small building, corrugated steel, but in the shadow underneath this gabled doorway is this sign that's kind of knocked askew that says site contains PCB.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of them.
Little tiny sign, very small in the image. And then another page that, you know, presumably this building is in the midst of these ruins. There's this quite stately building, you know, with Corinthian columns and a crisp American flag hanging from the porch. I mean, they're very striking images. But so, and you said a second ago that you sort of that the photographs kind of helped you see, I think.
Yeah, I saw. Wow, this is, you know, the photographs literally led me. I mean, I was taking them on my cell phone, and you know, I go home and, you know, let it sit there and then look at them and I go, well, I have to go back out there. What's going on? But they led the writing, and that's really rare. At least it is for me, because I usually lead the writing by the writing. And I can honestly say that this was an incident where the images did, you know, sort of take me by the hand and just lead me through there. And I was free to make up stuff. I'm almost afraid that people at Mare Island who are officials see this book. I mean, hopefully they won't. I mean, you know, part of my, as a businessman, I like to sell books, but, you know, just south of Mare Island, I think. There's a funny story. One of the, I think David Barish or somebody else might have found an outlet, believe it or not, book outlet at Costco. Yeah, Costco buys books and sells books.
Oh yeah.
And they have a division called American History. So I was urged to contact Costco to see if I could get this book at Costco. And of course, you know, like, my ambivalence is pronounced, and I was really tempted. And I went down that road and I talked there in Sanger, California. You know where that is? It's near Fresno, I think. It must be a big warehouse. And I talked to a lady and I explained the book to her and she says, that sounds very interesting. Where is Mare Island? And I said, you know, I explained to her everything. And it turns out that Costco has a big store in Vallejo. And she was wanting to buy the book and put it in the Vallejo thing and sent me some paperwork to fill out to do that. And I just thought, you know, that's I think I was advised by David Barish, who went to a Costco and actually saw the book operation, and it wasn't its place, So,
What's the name of your novel again?
The Shore and Dibblements. But it's not mine. I didn't write it. Thomas Fuller wrote it.
Yeah, we've heard that before. You didn't proofread.
That's true.
Won't get old again.
Well, so Brooks asked me to write a blurb for the book, which I did, and in the blurb I called Mare Island a monument to American empire. And
American what?
to American empire. So I want to turn to that topic. I mean, it's a theme that runs through your book, and I'd like you to read this passage, and I think it needs a little bit of setup. It's about your Navy friend who was on the Oriskany.
Oh, right,
Oriskany.
Yeah, so, I was born during the Cold War. I remember being at a dinner party. I wasn't at the dinner party, but my brother and I were in attendance at my parents' dinner party when Nikita Khrushchev, who was the premier of the Soviet Union, remember he took off his shoe and banged it on the desk. And I remember my father imitating that. So that was a big image in my head, like, And then we were all told to drop down under our desks, the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that. So I'm a child of that. So, this is, how do I track this? I have a very good friend who was in the military, in the Navy, and was on a ship cruising in the Pacific during Vietnam. And it was a big, big, big aircraft carrier. My friend says it was impossible to tell if you were at sea on a ship as large as the Oriskany. There was no feeling of being on the ocean. You could have been in a cubicle, in an office building, a skyscraper. The environment was completely artificial. You were kept alive by things you couldn't see. Boilers and blowers, air conditioning, vents, generators. One day it looked like another. Daylight was so linear it never disappeared. The light was fluorescent. On board the Oriskany sometime in 1973, my friend in the Navy dropped the whole project of becoming a better person. The way we were taught as kids to become the kind of people we thought we had to be. He became himself instead. He was 22 years old. So I started thinking about how different, and we're exactly the same age, how different his life by being in the military was from my life, who hadn't been in the military, by choice. And that really was very, sobering, profound to me. And that America is an empire is undeniable. I mean, it is. We don't like to think of it that way, I think. I think it has, negative connotations maybe, or, less than wonderful, conjures up less than wonderful imagery, but we are. So this is just sort of saying, let's just look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in that passage specifically, but I think throughout the book, there's this, I feel like there's this projection of our collective selves, the American empire, kind of mashed up against individual selves, your own person, but also your friend and other figures in the book, and that, it's something to contemplate. Yeah, you do it well. So, when we had coffee earlier in the week, so we didn't script this, but we did sort of plot things a little bit. We had coffee earlier in the week. You invoked Keats, the great English Romantic poet, and talked about negative capability.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I think you defined it for me, because I was clueless, as bless the mystery.
Yeah. Do you know this? I know a few of you in this room do. John Keats, English Romantic poet, who had this notion called negative capability. And what that means, as far as I can tell, is that a poet's someone who has to live in a lot of uncertainty. And it's that almost trained or acceptance of, when you're making what you think's art. And art can be a lot of things. It can be business. It can be, being a doctor. It's not limited to people who write or make, things on a canvas. So Keats's thinking was, you have to be able to tolerate uncertainty. You have to be able to live with it to create anything that's worthwhile. And I think that's what, I started as a poet. I mean, when I first started writing, I was actually a fairly ambitious poet, if such a thing exists. I sent out my poems to magazines and stuff, and in those days it was you get the rejection slips in the mail. You get them now, Ben. You get them on the internet, right, or you get them online.
Yeah.
So I was into it. I was really trying to write poems, and I was writing poems, and I was in workshops, and I paid attention to poetry. So I honor poetry. I think it's it's a very, very sublime art form. But it's challenging, and part of the challenge is living in this state where you just don't know. You don't, what did somebody say about a painting? A painting's never finished; it's only abandoned. Well, that's very much what a poet's life is, and so I was toying with that, that kind of thing.
So what if you bless the mystery, and that's the negative capability, what could you characterize the mystery of Mare Island?
What happened? I mean, what happened? I talked to a guy who is he was a nuclear engineer, and he actually worked there in the 1970s, and he said, I could feel it winding down then. People didn't have enough to do. They were standing around. And, so it officially closed in 1996. So that's how many years that sort of entropy, occurred. So it really, really, I said earlier, I almost didn't want to know the history of it. I finally, scratched a little history together and felt like, I should know something, And it's just this fascinating, monolithic ruin that invites you to walk around and participate. Yeah, that's the best I can do.
That's good. That's good. So I think we might want to open it up for questions.
I'd love to hear some questions if anybody has any.
I want to, okay. Why don't we start here?
Sorry. You were talking about genres earlier, and I've read bits of it. It sounds a lot like prose poetry to me. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's very nice. Nice of you to say that. I remember, this is funny, I was thinking of genres earlier, and I remember, there's this new genre called, it's not that new, it's called creative nonfiction. Yeah. Which I have a little problem with. I mean, it's like, I never came to grips with that phrase, passive aggressive. Now, if anybody can give me a definition of passive aggressive, besides my wife, I will listen. But I think that works. I wanted to call it imaginative journalism. But I ran that by somebody, and they said no, it's too cute. But I still kind of like it.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah.
But I like yours. I like yours better.
Thank you.
What was it?
Prose poetry.
What?
Prose poetry.
Graham's got a question.
Graham.
So, Brooks, my question to you is, it's kind of interesting because Mare Island shut down in a period of time where several other very significant military bases on the West Coast shut down. I think there's one in Orange County. I know there's one in Sacramento. Probably a bunch, a handful was that period of mid-90s?
You know, streamlining operations, the technological advances that happened probably. I'm not a military guy.
I mean, you live in one.
I do. And there I do. And there are, Admiral Zadwick told me that he is trying to get Mare Island turned into a national park. And there's an effort there, like the Presidio, where I live. But I have no answer why, you know, what caused the closure, why it happened. Yeah, Chris?
If it becomes a national park, would it require environmental cleanup?
Oh, I'm sure. Oh. Yeah, they're you know those helium canisters, those big. They're helium canisters, maybe 10 of them, just sort of slumped in the corner of a outside with a chain around it. I mean, not just one, but there's all kinds. I'm sure the remediation would. Lennar, a big builder, big national builder, tried to buy it. And actually built a little residential unit complex there. I want to say maybe 30 units, but that's stalled. And Vallejo is tremendously depressed. I mean, really, it looks pretty. You know, I hung out at the library for a while there, and it's pretty. You know, beat out.
Aren't they bankrupt, Brooks?
I think they were. I think
They got out.
as a city, yeah, municipality.
Was Mare Island abandoned?
Yes. Yeah, there are some little light industry things that have sprouted up there, you know, blue homes. They build modular housing, very, very, very nice modular, sort of, you know, modern architectural style wooden glass. They have their offices there, or their manufacturing there. It'd be a great artist compound. I mean, you know, some of the buildings are just perfect for painters or people making large-scale, you know, sculptural installations or something.
There's a college there, you know.
Yeah.
It has a Jewish tilt to it. I
Yeah.
can't remember the name of it.
Toro.
Yeah, Toro,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, a little college. So there's stuff happening there.
I lived in Vallejo for a brief time, and I wandered around the Mare Island a lot myself. Took pictures similar to yours. And the sense I got of it was the enormity of military buildings and things, and the size of everything. It was huge, enormous building, and you wonder what the hell did they do in all these buildings? And you know, some of the I lived in barracks, so I know what those are like. But what they did in some of these horrible, huge buildings, all the windows broken, and great crane.
Yeah.
And you go up to the golf course, there's a huge yard there with big tubes, and I thought also, and I've been thinking about it now, how fragile all that is. You know, you build these enormous things, and every time passes it by, and things happen, and it just lays there.
Yeah.
And it reminds you of the size of all this.
Massive.
Massive.
Just massive.
Like the
Reminded
Roman
me of
ruins.
being,
The Roman ruins.
Yeah.
It's fun to ask people, do you know Mare Island? Now it's a question we have to ask everybody. Have you ever heard about Mare Island? And it's surprising, every now and then you get a person who has been there, and the last one I asked said, oh yeah, there's a beautiful chapel, fantastic, and my niece got married there. Well,
It really is interesting. This was one of the interesting things to me, because I'm fairly new to the Bay Area. I lived up here during college, and then I moved down to Los Angeles and had a lot of my life down in LA. But I was just shocked by how many people did not know Mare Island. I think we spoke about this earlier. Like, you know, wow, really, you don't know about Mare Island? No. Where is it?
Does anyone live in those great mansions where the admirals lived when there was a naval base?
Does anybody live there now?
Yeah, anyone live in those?
No, you know,
No.
but you can't,
They're empty.
they're starting to lease it out as office
Are
space.
they?
Yeah,
They're really magnificent old buildings.
yeah, oh, they are, they are,
Grand.
absolutely.
Matt had a question. Matt.
Oh, Mr. Strauss.
The word that occurred to me, I think 3 or 4 times while you were speaking, is transience. as something that's sort of hanging over a lot of this story. I was thinking about it. Obviously, it occurs just in the idea of abandonment to begin with, but then when you were talking about citizenship and what does it mean to be a citizen, and bearing witness to history or how we perceive history, and I wonder if you have anything to say about the subject of transience, and specifically the thing that I was thinking about is I wonder, there's a lot of talk today about sustainability, I think, in a way that maybe there was not that much talk when places like Mare Island were in their heyday. We weren't necessarily thinking about whether the great projects that were being built could be preserved, or whether they had legs, or whether they'd be something that likely to be around in 50 years, or whether they were friendly to the world or friendly to the environment, or any of those kinds of things. And one of the questions that occurs to me is whether we've moved into some sort of post, historical moment where we're no longer thinking in terms, everything is sustainable these days, everything that we put our mind to, perhaps or perhaps not. But I wonder if you have thoughts about transience. And
let me read a little, really quick. This is the first part of the book. I was driving around on a Saturday morning in early March on my way somewhere. I can't remember where. It doesn't matter whether I remember or don't remember. When I first saw Mare Island, this kind of wandering was good for me then. I didn't have time for it like I do now. I remember this. I'd been reading a book about the Vedas. You know the Vedas, the Indians? How they thought of the sky as the ocean and the ocean as their heaven. There were no fixed places in Vedic culture, and no trace of buildings survived their civilization. There's no trace that they ever made a habitable structure.
But they left writing.
Huh?
They left writing.
Yeah, they left writing. If they had a Parthenon, it was, as one admirer wrote, made of words. So to your question, yeah, I mean, that transience, I don't know that I'd use that word, but impermanence, and just I think there is a lot more. I think America was just going great guns. It was gun, this was the creation of the empire, 1854. The Civil War hadn't even occurred when this Mare Island was established. And there was just this ongoingness. There's this journey we're on as a people or a nation. We're just going to keep going. I don't think there was any thought of reclamation or sustainability, or it was just gung-ho. So that's my best attempt to, but it was definitely from the get-go.
I'm just curious about Mare Island. Why, if it's not an island, why is it called Mare Island?
See, you're so literal.
Where was the mayor?
I can't answer it. I don't know. I know the name. A mare. They were taking a white mare across on a raft on one of the channels up there, and it drowned. And that's how the quote-unquote island got its name.
They being the Vallejo party.
Yeah. But I don't know how it gets away with calling itself an island, because it's clearly not. I meant to bring tonight I had some maps made up I wanted to pass.
Where is it attached to the rest of
on the, what would it be, south side of Vallejo?
Near the bridge there.
Yeah.
Carquinez.
Yeah. I mean, an island is, isn't an island supposed to be like surrounded by water? It's not.
Was it Earth?
I don't know. Probably
It
at some
doesn't,
point.
from the maps, it doesn't look like it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it looks like a peninsula.
But is it natural, or was it fill like Treasure Island, or is it actually natural?
I don't know.
I think the lands behind the area where it's attached were marshes previously, before they became salt ponds,
That
and
makes
when they were
sense.
filled for farming or diked for farming. So that was all marshland, so effectively you couldn't get back and forth to Mare Island very much at all without a boat.
Okay.
Just because of the nature of the topography at that time.
Okay.
That makes total sense, because it is very marshy when you're obviously coming over 37 and coming that way. I mean, that's tidal, whatever they are.
Right.
And flats.
And everything on the other side of 37 they're all salt ponds that were created.
Yeah.
And that was just all marshland that you really couldn't traverse.
Okay.
So is this a good time to give your George Packer quiz?
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
You know who George Packer is? And then we'll wrap this up. And I hope I know. George Packer is a really brilliant political writer, writes for the New Yorker primarily, but writes for other publications too. So I'm going to give you a quiz. I'm going to read 2 statements by Packer in a recent article, the March 28th edition of the New Yorker. And if you can tell me what country he's writing about, you get a free book. With a bookmark. Okay. Politics remains an opaque game played by insiders. The citizen doesn't consider the state at his service. The state is there to profit from the citizen. This provokes a complete dissociation in the notion of citizenship.
United States. Scalia.
He was writing it about Tunisia.
Oh my God.
But I had the same reaction. I'm reading this, and it's a really good article. If you get the New Yorker, it's worth reading about the creation of jihadism in Tunisia. And I just lifted these things out, and I thought it'd be fun to see if they resonated as a description of our current situation.
They do.
They do. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you all for coming. If you care to buy a book, they're around. And I'd be happy to help you. Thank you, Jim. Oh, you know it's done. Yeah.
No, not I'm going. And then I look at and then Mom's like, do you want me to take them out, please? I'm like, these kids are and it's hard.
Well, I was going to take them to the park, but then it was so dark. Yeah, right. So they did a really good job for us.
That's probably a really good idea.